Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's lecture, part of Fragner's exhibition, Space as Evidence, Architecture as a Tool for Defending Human and Environmental Rights. I'm Alex, and it's my honor to moderate tonight's session. And our focus this evening is the tragic bombing of the Mariupol Drama Theater on March 16, 2022. We are very privileged to have with us tonight Maxim Rokhmaniykov, the director of Center Spatial Technology. Maxim is an architect, researcher, and educator whose work emphasizes the use of spatial modeling technologies as a mode of inquiry into the urban condition. And under his leadership, the Center for Spatial Technology, a Ukrainian multidisciplinary research organization, has undertaken a profound project to digitally reconstruct the theater and document the experience of those who sought refuge there. In collaboration with the Organization of Forensic Architecture and Forensics, they have collected and analyzed thousands of social media posts and photographs to reconstruct the events of that day. And their work preserves the memory of the victims and also serves as a critical evidence of the Russian war crimes of that day. Thank you so much, Maxim, for joining us tonight. I'm really looking forward to your lecture.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I will share a screen for presentation sharing. And I hope that I can share sound as well. Yeah, I think I will be only able to share images through Meet, even though I actually can first very briefly show you a fragment of video, because I unfortunately cannot share.
Okay. Yeah, we're getting back.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I will just share the fragment of the video and then show my presentation. Before I just want to say that this is the work that me with my team we did for 2 years, pretty much starting from the event itself, and throughout this process we indeed did a lot of reconstruction of memory of witnesses. You will see a little bit of that in the brief introduction, and then I go through my slides, and from the slides you will see a little bit about methodology of how that is done, and I'll end again with sharing some links and materials that people can explore further. So this is roughly what you will hear tonight. I'm going to share one of this time. I hope it's going to work. Just to share a little bit of the video itself with you. Yes.
Вы здесь, здесь. Куда вы ходите? Где ребенок? Пойдемте к машине.
On 16 March 2022, the Russian Air Force bombed Mariupol's Drama Theater, which at its peak served as a refuge for up to 2,000 people. Hundreds are estimated to have been killed in the blast. A few minutes after the explosion, those who survived can be seen exiting the theater for the last time. On 28 March, the Russian forces captured the city center. As part of covering up their crimes, they quickly began falsifying evidence and used the ruins of the theater as a backdrop for fascist victory propaganda. At the end of 2022, they boxed in the theater with scaffolding and bulldozed most of the remaining structure to the ground. We seek to explode this black box of denial by assembling a growing archive of evidence related to the theater's history and wartime transformation. We collected and analyzed thousands of photos, videos, and social media posts and located them within a 3D model. This model was brought to life through over 100 hours of witness interviews conducted using a technique called situated testimony. The collaborative process of reconstruction allowed survivors to walk through the virtual model to facilitate recollection and fill in the missing details. As each witness recalled their part in this complex event, the model became an assemblage of collective memory. As we enter and move through the theater, space by space, we recount how this cultural landmark gave way to a community engaged in collective habitation, mutual care, and joint decision-making. The archive we've assembled tells the story of a building that, at the epicenter of high-intensity warfare, became an entire city.
So the fragment that you just saw is the beginning of the video. It's one of the things we made as a result of this work, and this video was kind of like a summary of a long process of working with all kinds of materials, starting from drawings and models, but most importantly, working with witness testimonies. I'm going to share a little bit about that process. Again, let me share my screen. Okay, you should be able to see it now. This is the kind of a very technical part of this process, which has to do with basically searching for specific elements of the destroyed building on the building as it was before the attack. This process we started again pretty much in the very beginning of the full-scale invasion. When this attack happened, our colleagues immediately went to the archives and found these quite beautiful drawings of the theater, and we made a three-dimensional model of the space. And at the time, we had a lot of questions. We understood that the building is ruined and is destroyed, as you see here in this footage. There's a quite severe destruction caused to this theater, and we also knew that it was a civilian shelter. So immediately the kind of news about this attack went everywhere. We could read different versions of these events, and unfortunately there was very little clarity of what's going on. All the world's media picked up this image from satellite, that was taken a couple of days ago on 14th of March, a couple of days before the attack. And it, of course, featured this writing children that was written on both sides of the theater. So while this building became iconic and spread over all kinds of channels, it was still very little known about what happened and how many casualties there are, and if anyone survived. So there were kind of reports from Ukrainian MPs that we documented, and they were trying to explain what's going on, but still the situation was quite, as they say, obscured by the fog of war. And there were a couple of photographs from the ground that emerged. And again, from these images, it was very hard to tell what's going on the ground. So in a way, this is partly the strategy of the Russian Federation's, their doctrine of war has this idea of fog of war as one of the instruments of obscuring the attacks on civilian population. Here you can see the context of this attack on the map in terms of kind of how city is surrounded, and also at the same time you can understand that by the time that this attack happened, the city was completely out of communication networks, out of electricity, mostly out of water and gas. So what kind of you see here are the very rare materials that surfaced on the same day. Thankfully, this kind of intentional erasure and intentional also obscuring of this attack, there were reports that emerged a couple of days before that were kind of came from the Russian side, from kind of unverified accounts trying to claim that there will be some provocation in the theater. So it's very clear that this attack was carefully planned. And in a way, this kind of vagueness and this fogginess of these events would be still there if not these people. So these are the witnesses of the attack whom we managed to speak to. You can see that first we kind of like talked to them over Zoom. This couple is Serhiy and Yevgenia Zabohonsky. They are both workers of the theater. She worked at the theater for 20 years. I think Serhiy worked at the theater for 19 years. They were responsible for organizing the civilian shelter. They were one of the first people who got to the theater, and they organized the kind of everyday life of people. And in a way, it's thanks to all of these witnesses we can understand the event much better. So together with witnesses, we worked to reconstruct these events day by day. And first we talked to them over Zoom. We managed to reach roughly 100 people to interview. And then with 26 of these people, we also conducted in-depth interviews. So it's also very important to see some of the footage that they managed to make, but couldn't publish online pretty much all the time of being in Mariupol. So this is Sergei Zabohonsky's video. He's basically filming the front of the theater, and as he's an actor of the theater, he's kind of taking a video where there's himself on a poster of a performance that was meant to happen there. These materials from the witnesses were very important for us, because it is through these materials and also through other media that we could understand such thing as for example, the exact time of the attack. This is the video that one of the witnesses took while entering the building. His name is Alexander Rubets. He came to Mariupol to rescue his friends, and he couldn't find them, so he ended up entering the building of the theater a few minutes before the explosion. He's here capturing the very entrance of the building at the moment of the attack. And as we know from his testimony, he shot this video accidentally, trying to turn on the flashlight on his phone, and instead capturing the sequence. Due to this sequence, we could tell that the attack happened at 10:06 in the morning, which is 4.5 hours later than first reports of the 4.5 hours earlier than the first reports of the attack surfaced. So you can see the kind of the power of that fog of war. We could also verify this through satellite images. These are two satellite photographs taken at 10:02 and 10:20. And you can see that between them there's the attack. So I'll tell you a little bit about this process of reconstructing the events with witnesses. Of course, we worked with a lot of different materials. We worked with a lot of archival footage. We saw images of this place and how important it was for the city. We also realized that this theater was constructed according to a standard project, meaning that there are other theaters in Ukraine that look very similar, and in fact inside they look almost identical. So one of the things we could do, it was to go to Poltava, to the twin of Mariupol Theater, and to make 3D scans. These were very helpful for us to understand the inside space of the building that doesn't exist anymore, but kind of a weird coincidence helped us to much better understand the spaces of the theater, and then we could also use this to understand interior space by looking at photographs. And you can see here this connection between photographs and 3D model that we constructed. So these are also photogrammetric models of the destroyed building. You can see them on our website, and they were also helpful to kind of reconstruct the attack itself. But for the purposes of today, we can go through inside space. And once we had this set of drawings and also the spatial model of the building, we also could work with witnesses. So here you can see the space of the theater as it's drawn on the right-hand side, and we send it to our witnesses. Particularly this we sent to Sergei and Evgenia Zabohonsky, who I mentioned them before. They know the theater space very, very intimately. And here you can see their kind of handwriting, explaining what happened in each of these spaces. This was quite important for us, again, to prepare for the round of interviews. And then, as I said, that we worked with archival media, we also collected quite a big amount of images that were also helpful for working with witnesses, because sometimes we could understand where certain events happened, where certain witnesses were. Quite many of them actually made images that they had to somehow smuggle through the filtration checkpoints on the way out of Mariupol. So then you can see that kind of this in-depth interviews, they function a little bit like this, where there are 3 people in the frame sitting around the table, where in the center there is a witness, and on the right from the witness there is a person who's doing 3D modeling and is controlling the screen and kind of basically adhering to the recommendations of the witness on how to model something, where to move something, and on the left-hand side from the witness there is an interviewer. These are the frames from the interviews, and I'll play you just a little bit of these fragments from the video for you to have a sense of how it works. I think you will not be able to hear sound, actually, so I'll talk over it. So this is kind of like a lobby of the theater, where we realized that all 4 witnesses that you will see here on the screen were sheltering kind of side by side from each other. Of course, there were hundreds of people in this hallway, kind of in a very tightly packed space. So yeah, these people would basically like share the space, and then we can see one of the witnesses and the process of reconstruction of her shelter, where she's basically talking about where her and 2 of her children sheltered. You can see the modeler add elements of her space from the objects library, and basically we are following her recommendations on how exactly did she organize her space around her shelter. So through interviews like this, we were able to get to something that is quite solid. If in the beginning what we had was this vagueness of the fog of war and lack of information and assumptions about what could have happened, the different reports estimated the number of casualties starting from 12 to 500, which you can sense a little bit of a broad range there. So to overcome this vagueness and this lack of understanding of what happened in the theater, we basically, as you could see here, combined archival footage, images from the survivals, spatial models, and most importantly, witness testimonies around one kind of space that we aimed to describe. We recorded hundreds of hours of these interviews with witnesses, and here you can see a tool where you can filter different kind of testimonies, understanding certain parts of the story. And in this particular way, we did feel like this model became a kind of a container of collective memory of our witnesses. You can see here on this sequence that there are different objects that witnesses put in different places. So we never had issues with that. We always kind of wanted to see how witnesses remember the events, also understanding that sometimes traumatic events can skew memories, but you can still see the main part of these events. You can see that there's a slight difference between where the witnesses placed the piano, but most importantly, you can see certain things 100%, such as that this was a civilian shelter. It's very easy to disprove Russian claims about people being held hostage or whatnot they were spreading. You can see that this civilian shelter is such that people remember every corner of it because they were engaged in a broad range of communal activities, such as cooking, taking care of children, debating kind of next moves of how to organize this shelter. And basically you can see how this spatial footprint records these testimonies also in a way that you can view it in its total. You can see different corners of the theater and kind of almost like understand which parts of the theater our witnesses remember and understand best. And I will only stop on one of such spaces, which is field kitchen. It's particularly important because pretty much all of the witnesses mentioned it. It's the place where most casualties happened. You can see it on this reconstruction here. It's where kind of like it's very close to where the epicenter of the explosion was. This particular field kitchen was run by volunteers, and they were very, very excited and proud to talk about how they ran this communal shelter. Just for the purposes of talking about this and to share this with you, I want to share you a little bit of the website of how these narratives are structured and presented now on this website called Mariupol Theater. It's theater.spatialtech.info. I will share it just in a second. Sorry, I have to change my screen sharing settings every time on Teams because I'm not very well familiar with this this software. So this is the sequence that can you see my screen okay? This
Yes.
is a sequence that you can see on the very kind of front page of the website, and on the sequence you can see the theater as it was before the attack. Then you can see the destroyed building, and you can see the consequences of the attack. But most importantly, you can see this kind of collective footprint of spatial memories that our witnesses contributed to our study. So each of these kinds of scenes that our witnesses modeled are put together to kind of strengthen one another and to also better understand what actually happened. So on the website, you can browse through all the testimonies. They are mostly in Ukrainian with English subtitles always. And you can also see more information about how this is done and our methodology. But also in the essays section, you can see the kind of important chapters of our study, where we go through these materials that are showed space by space. We try to reconstruct the timeline of the events. kind of starting from the morning of the day in this particular essay. Also reconstructing a route of one of our witnesses who, as I mentioned, drove to the theater, but then going through the kind of the attack and trying to understand the spaces that suffered from the attack the most. So on these photographs, you can see the space of field kitchen, and this is the area where most volunteers were. So yeah, this is on this website you can go through these materials. This is probably one of the images that I think tells most. You know, sometimes an image can tell more than a report. Here you can see above the panoramic reconstruction of the sunset on the 15th of March. You can see people. I can see quite a lot of people around, but potentially not as many people as could have been here in the morning. You can see that the field kitchen area itself that is barricaded from outside is empty. So, and of course, downstairs you can see the same area of the theater. You can see that, for instance, these windows are the same. They're kind of aligned one with another. And you can see the consequences of the attack. So on this website, you can also see some other materials. You can read reports of experts. So there's a legal assessment of this attack and also expertise on the explosion. But I would encourage you to go to the website to browse through the witness interviews, because this is the material that kind of sums up this work in the best way. So this is it for me for the presentation, and I know we have time for questions.
Thank you so much for the lecture. It is an incredible body of work and what you have achieved. I'll start with my questions. I actually have a lot, and everyone can join. So firstly, I wanted to ask, since the project release, what impact had it on public awareness and legal proceedings related to the Mariupol Drama Theater? Or maybe there have been any notable response from international organizations or legal bodies? And the follow-up question also, if you have any next steps planned. I saw that you have a first part of the video. Is there a second one coming out?
Thank you. Yeah, we instead of doing the second part, we decided to make this a website with edited interviews. We published all these materials in a little bit of a more long form because we felt like it would be difficult to shorten them to a kind of format that, you know, video dictates certain time frames. So on the website, we also have extended reports with all the references and all kinds of stuff like that. In terms of public awareness, these materials were actually shared by President Zelensky on his personal social media and through United 24 media, it's Ukrainian media that is ran by presidential office. That immediately gave us quite a lot of visibility and gave a lot of visibility to the stories of the witnesses. So that was kind of like a moment where we also got messages from people who were in the theater whom we didn't manage to find before and things like that. And on legal side, we're not directly working with that aspect of this war crime, but we are working with an organization that is called ECCHR. They're based in Berlin. The extended name is the European Center for human constitutional rights. And we worked closely with them to basically give them extended array of information that we gathered, along with witness testimony transcripts. And some of our witnesses continue working with them to testify about this case further. So that is already kind of outside of our everyday work. It's this process is ran by the lawyers. So I think that's. Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I actually have one more. So there is a lot of, I feel like, tension in the work going between the shelter and then target, and also architecture is something we envision as like building future, and what you're doing is like trying to reconstruct something which was destroyed. And I was wondering, based on your findings from this project and maybe the other researches, do you see the recurrent architectural or spatial patterns in how military aggression goes through the city, annexing the city? And could we use, and if yes, could we use those patterns to inform the future in urban planning for protection strategies? Is that?
Yeah,
Does that make
think,
sense?
Yeah, as it's quite hard to talk about that, because you can see the city that is quite diverse, with quite kind of like various urban fabric that is completely destroyed, right? Mariupol. And it almost didn't matter which kind of architecture, or what kind of space people inhabited in these shelters. They were kind of all quite threatened by the artillery shelling and bombing. By the way, all of our witnesses mentioned, of course, airplanes and bombing, which was also quite important to hear from the witnesses. The theater stands on the intersection of two streets that Mariupol is founded upon. So this is often the case that I have to show things while I'm responding questions. So I'll do that now. I mean, it's quite important for us as architects to understand these kind of historic aspects of this place, because one of the questions that we asked was what was destroyed, and in the beginning we went through these drawings, and we went through kind of like understanding of what this building is and when was it built. And then we realized that it stands on the intersection of these two streets, where kind of a church used to stand, which is a central church of Mariupol, which was also destroyed by the Bolsheviks in 1927. And there was a Nazi cemetery there, by the way. But so, I mean, the only thing I can say is that this was a very prominent place in the kind of urban fabric of Mariupol, and in a way, for that reason, people thought that maybe that's gonna help them, because it's such a landmark. Everyone knows about this place, but it obviously it wasn't because of architecture that this place was targeted. I think it's also interesting to quickly note that the Russians now in the occupied Mariupol are reconstructing the theater. So it's been built exactly like it was when kind of before the attack. Of course, it's made from other materials, and like there are some changes, but it's quite a typical thing that they're just kind of trying to build it as if nothing happened. So I think in this sense, for us, it was quite weird to hear the word reconstruction. After 2 years of modeling the space, trying to go through these corridors with people and understand their experiences, to see the literal reconstruction of the bricks that were destroyed. I think it's quite important to understand what you're reconstructing. And in case of Mariupol, it's very hard to deal with the fact that it's obviously not only buildings that were destroyed, it's not only even individual human lives that were taken, it's also like the whole communities that got completely dispersed and destroyed. And that was special for this project, for us to witness these people on the same call. When we had the final call with all the witnesses, kind of showing them what we've done to try to see if nothing goes away from what they think is right. And we also discussed a lot questions of representation, question of showing their testimonies with them. It was quite special to see them kind of talk to each other and comment on each other's thing. So that's in the end, of course, kind of for us, the main meaning of reconstruction was that.
So I might ask if that's okay.
Of course.
Well, it's shocking to hear that Russia is actually building it again, and I hope they didn't use your research to help them build the replica. But I wanted to ask, and sorry if you mentioned it and I didn't hear it, can you tell us something more about what disciplines or professions were part of the team, whether it was only architects or was there someone else as well? And how did you manage to fund such research?
The group that we worked with is quite diverse. I mean, we are all like the core CST team are architects, but we've not been doing architecture for quite a long time. We also had a sociologist whom you saw during the interviews, who's asking questions in cave interviews. We worked with 3D modelers who were working as people who were conducting spatial interviews, but also after to help us process the materials that we gathered. We mostly worked with external organizations. This work is, of course, done in partnership with Forensic Architecture, with ECCHR, who did the legal expertise. If you go through the website, you can see all of these different experts. There's literally dozens. So it was quite important for us to work across different disciplines and at the same time to not be kind of within one or another kind of fixed framework. In terms of funding, we received a number of grants to do this work. It's mostly funded through grants.
But then basically we're also in charge of finding the money for your research.
Yeah,
like there was another load of work.
Yeah, of course, we are an organization that constantly has to deal with that, especially in regards to projects that the Ukrainian president didn't share yet and no one heard about. So it's always harder to kind of fundraise for new work, but it's okay. That's part of our work.
Thanks. Maybe Caroline? There is something with the mic. Give me a second.
The question is
So, yeah, the question is in the chat.
Shall we? Maybe I will read it up to make sure it's in the recording. So the question is, looking ahead, what advancements in digital tools and spatial analysis do you think will most significantly impact the field of urban planning and forensic architecture in documenting war crimes?
I think the tools are always secondary. You know, like, it's quite nice that we could go to Poltava and do LiDAR scans and to, you know, like spin them around in Unreal Engine and to show that to witnesses. But it's quite hard for me to say that, because on the one hand, we're constantly working with new tools. And on the other hand, it's quite rare where tools define how these fields are developing in the way that it's easy to see. So for us, we kind of, for instance, in terms of modeling the building and modeling, preparing for the interviews, we discussed a lot topics of representation and topics of rendering, how to show certain spaces to these people, such that that would not be, for example, potentially re-traumatizing. So we wanted something that is relatively detailed, but at the same time not too immersive. And when you talk about things like this, then you go into tools and you discuss whether you want actually photogrammetries or actually simple models. And most of the interviews, as you will see, are done with simple models for that reason. So sometimes you even have to go back and use kind of simpler technological apparatus to do these kinds of work. Sorry, I know I didn't answer that question, but I honestly don't know. We will see. Once that will happen, it will be very easy to say.
While we wait for another question, I was wondering if this, like, how this work project impacted you personally. If you could share, you don't have to.
And maybe
Or
I just add to that, because I think I was thinking the same as Alex, that if I'm well aware or correctly aware, that the researchers usually also have some like psychological consultancy or help, or even of course the witnesses. So did you manage to get this kind of support or collaboration as well on these projects?
Yeah, we had to go through quite extensive training in terms of how to deal with witnesses. As I mentioned, this kind of concern of re-traumatization was quite important. And we spent a lot of time on that, and I have to say that it was important for us, and it was also nice to see that witnesses were very kind of, it was very easy to work with them. There were all the people who agreed to do this were willing to do this, and because of that, and because of the process being quite slow, and you know, in a way it's nice. You sit in a room with people who model everything you say, and you know, as a result, you get this kind of very detailed space that, in a way, it feels like you constructed. So we managed to, I think, set up this process in a way that is very friendly to people who would talk about something that's quite difficult for them. I think with the team and impact on us, it's hard to say. I haven't been talking about this project for a while because we moved to different topics, and I have to say it's quite hard to talk about it now, as opposite to when we were doing it. I think when we were doing it, we were in the midst of these events, and it was kind of like also coping mechanism of trying to do something and trying to participate in this kind of work. It's true that researchers' well-being should be considered very carefully when doing such work as well.
Thank you. There is one more question from Lindika.
Hi, thank you for the lecture. It's very informative. I have a question. Do you envision applying these methodologies which you develop in this project to other instances regarding war crimes or human rights violations? If so, are you already busy with such projects, or are you planning to begin with any new projects in this particular focus? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. There is a link here on the website that summarizes theater study, but if you go to that and you go to the website of the Center for Spatial Technologies, you'll see our work. We've been doing such work for quite a while, and there are other studies that they always differ a little bit, and we always pick tools and ways of working that correspond to the case. But yes, there are other things we're working on, and there are other cases that we've already done. The very first attack that we studied during the full-scale invasion was the Russian attack on Kyiv TV tower. It's kind of like an interesting case in the sense that it was in the very first days of full-scale invasion when Russia was targeting Ukrainian telecommunication networks. And one of the missiles missed the TV tower and actually hit Babyn Yar, which is one of the big Holocaust sites in Ukraine. So suddenly the missiles were falling on the Holocaust site, and we were trying to kind of look at that case. There's also a video for that case. You can watch it on our own website. But thanks for that question.
This Kyiv TV tower or something like that is going to be exhibited in Skopje as well, right?
I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I should ask my team.
Okay, sorry.
Last thing I heard is that they're not replying. So.
Okay.
I think for now we don't have any more questions. Thank you so much for the lecture. It was really incredible to hear it from you, and thank you for the work you're doing.